Hey everyone, me Kevin here. Something has gone absolutely horribly wrong at Robinhood. And in this video, we're going to go through what the heck is going on at Robinhood and this massive lawsuit facing Robinhood. Folks, first, in case you don't know, on January 28th, 2021, there was a massive short squeeze, a once-in-a-decade style short squeeze led by a retail trading movement to squeeze the short sellers, or people who sell a stock into oblivion, and crush them by basically making them buy the stock back at much more expensive pricing, thanks to them losing billions of dollars in margin calls because the stock was going to the moon. And that's what was happening on January 28th. Stocks like AMC and GameStop were skyrocketing, absolutely going to the moon. But all of a sudden, in the middle of this once-in-a-decade short squeeze, Robinhood, who's supposed to take from the rich and give to the poor, potentially colluded with the rich, companies like Citadel or Melvin Capital, whatever, and ended up preventing the poor from making money against the rich by turning off their ability to buy stocks like GameStop and AMC. In fact, you're going to hear a lot about this because this is called PCOing, position close only, or moving stocks to position close only, in this particular lawsuit that we're going to go through. Robinhood was not the only brokerage that did this. You had TD Ameritrade, Webull, and other brokers who also had to move certain positions to a PCO, and that's because in the whole clearing world, there are these other agencies and companies and corporations that can demand certain deposits from companies like Robinhood or TD Ameritrade or Webull or whatever. And these deposits go up based on the levels of risk that are currently in the market. And on January 28th, the morning of January 28th, the levels of risk were so high in the market because certain stocks like GameStop and AMC had gone so ridiculously high, so crazy high, that risks of a potential financial collapse were clearly imminent. That specific corporations and agencies like the DTCC required massive deposits from companies like Robinhood and Webull and Fidelity, and they then decided to move certain stocks to position close only, which basically forced people to no longer be able to buy shares of companies like GameStop and AMC. And when we're in a short squeeze, we know that momentum keeps a short squeeze going, but if you can't buy the stock, you can't keep the momentum going, and then all of a sudden the stocks came crashing down, much to the benefit of wealthy companies that were getting burned like Citadel, and to the demise of retail traders like you and I. Folks, in this video, we're gonna look at the lawsuit, and I want you to ask yourself, if you're the judge looking at this case, could you possibly, first of all, put on an impartial hat and not try to burn Robinhood to the ground before hearing the case? Well, it's up to you, but in this video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start by showing you the counts against Robinhood. Count 1, negligence. Negligence, what does this mean? Negligence is basically saying that Robinhood had a duty to make sure its platform was up and would not fail. But remember, other platforms were shut down as well, and or trading for certain stocks was shut down as well. So this is going to be a good defense for Robinhood, is pointing to the other brokers. It wasn't just Robinhood. Why? Robinhood's going to have to come out with statistics and big old math to go, this was a 3 sigma event, which is a fancy way of saying it's a 1 in like 5 million chance of happening. And they might make the argument that it was a 1 in 10 sigma event, that this whole short squeeze happening was something you could have never prepared for. Now, usually, what does negligence mean? Well, negligence usually means, by example, that you did something stupid, but you didn't think you were going to hurt someone. It's that you should have known better, but you didn't actually think you were going to hurt someone. So negligence, as a judge, is it possible that Robinhood was negligent in what happened? Let me give you an example. Let's say you're in the middle of a desert and there's a stop sign, 4-way stop. You're going 80 miles an hour. Nobody's around. You're like, F that. I'm going through that stop sign. And you blow that stop sign real hard. But then you cause an accident. That is negligent. You didn't think you were going to cause a problem, but you're kind of stupid and you made a mistake anyway and you caused an accident. That's a negligence. The argument here from the plaintiffs is, Robinhood, you stupid. You should have never had to be pushed into the situation where you would ever have to move stocks to position close only. It's not fair. You should have been capable. Robinhood, again, is going to have to defend with statistics, going, this was a statistical improbability. We could have never known that that stop sign was there. That's going to be the argument. We'll see what the judge says. But the next count they have is gross negligence. Now, gross negligence goes a little further. That's like saying you literally saw families pushing strollers in that four-way stop and you decided to floor through it anyway. That's grossly negligent. That's like you knew what you were doing is bad. That's like a doctor prescribing somebody penicillin when in the medical file it says they're allergic to penicillin. Very, very, very bad. Okay, that would potentially crush Robinhood is a grossly negligent, claim actually being a guilty or becoming a guilty verdict. Breach of fiduciary duty. This one's a little bit of a stretch, and we'll see. We're going to go through the arguments in the moment here. So, for example, when I'm a real estate agent and I'm selling a house, I have a fiduciary duty to my client. If the house is crap, I need to tell my client that. Like, don't buy this house. I've done that before as a broker. But stockbrokers and stock brokerages don't have this obligation. They don't have as many fiduciary duties. They have some. There was Regulation BI that passed that created some. But usually, this only applies to brokers who are actually trading on behalf of their clients. It's kind of like, hey, I'm going to take your money and invest it for you. That might create some like standards or suitability standards that require you to elevate your care for your client. And there are differences between fiduciary and suitability. We're not going to get into that in this video because it's not what this is about. Robinhood doesn't invest in its clients' money. It's a trading platform. And so this lawsuit is trying to allege, yeah, but y'all basically were fiduciaries for your clients. You should be fiduciaries. This would be a huge change for the brokerage industry. Like every broker would probably have to dramatically increase their fees if they were deemed to be fiduciaries, because now they're basically responsible for making sure that when you're YOLO option trading, you're not doing something that's stupid and could hurt yourself. And fiduciary, again, means brokers have to tell you things, even if it means they make less commissions, which in some senses is good, especially if you're really advising your client, you're an advisor. But for a trading platform, I don't know, does anybody actually think of Robinhood as an advisor? I mean, I don't think of Robinhood as an advisor, but we'll see. That's an interesting one. Then they also suggest implied duty of care, and they go through these complaints that, hey, Robinhood's gamifying the platform. You know, they're doing the sparklies and the confetti and stuff when you buy. Okay, fine. Let's get into the juicy stuff more importantly, though, and this is going to be where it gets a little bit fun. So, this lawsuit starts off by saying this case is about the extreme divergence between the professed belief about how Robinhood actually runs its business. Basically, they're saying, hey, we thought one thing about Robinhood, it's actually something else. And they specifically talk about January 28th, which is worth noting. If you type into YouTube right now, Robinhood banned SEC and the state, you're going to see a video from me from May 12th where I break down a massive SEC settlement with Robinhood for shenanigans that Robinhood has screwed up with in the past. But that settlement had to do with everything leading up to January 28th, 2021. January 28th, 2021 is still on the table for the SEC. So you can bet the SEC is going to be watching this lawsuit here. But let's get to some of the juicy stuff here. Because, again, this is where you're going to see by suspending one side of the transaction, they basically hurt retail traders. Okay, but we want to get to some of the juicy stuff here. Some of the juicy stuff here that I found, and I highlighted this to make it simple, and we're going to streamline this. One of the things was here, Robinhood product manager recognized the danger of the PCO policy. We're going to get crucified for PCOing, and I wrote, oops. Quote, David says, we are too big for them to actually shut us down. In other words, this is a reference to, remember how I said certain agencies required large deposits from Robinhood? Like, they can't shut us down. Yeah, but they could actually make you shut certain stocks down by making the deposit requirements insanely high. So some of this is like, was Robinhood at fault, or is Robinhood the face of this, right? And that's going to be a big out for Robinhood in this case. Like, would Robinhood have had to change these things if Robinhood didn't have these crazy requirements imposed on them from like the DTCC, right? Anyway, but they say here we're going to get crucified for this, and look at the time. 5:35 a.m., like an hour before the market opens, right? 55 minutes for PCOing. Now, then they say here that contrary to CEO Vlad Tenev's assertion, the events at issue in this case are not aptly described as a black swan or 5 Sigma event. Robinhood was knowingly pushing the envelope under the assumption that it was untouchable. This is an interesting counter-argument that they're making because they already know what Robinhood's going to allege. They're basically saying, hey, you guys were cavalier. You thought when you went to go run that stop sign, you were going to be okay. It's an interesting argument they're making here. And they're even using the fact that Robinhood ramped up its marketing while the platform was redlining as an argument against Robinhood. Now this, I don't know if I could say that because the GameStop short squeeze really began kind of like it began earlier in January, but things in terms of redlining really started, things started really going nuts around January 24th to 25th. And full disclosure, I own Robinhood stock, but I'm gonna totally be a bully here, okay? And we're gonna tear into Robinhood where they're wrong. I'm just gonna be very, very transparent. I do own some Robinhood stock. And at the beginning of January, I was a Robinhood affiliate because for the first time ever, Robinhood gave people the opportunity to get 4 free stocks with Robinhood. That was insane. They started that agreement, I want to say at the end of December, and then they started the actual offer somewhere around January 19th, and it was supposed to go from the 19th through the 31st, which, why does that matter? Because a lot of statistics show that Robinhood's usage skyrocketed, and there was this big inflection point up in its user base right around the end of January when this debacle was happening. But it was also the first time ever that Robinhood did, hey, sign up and get 4 free stocks with Robinhood. They used to have this get 1 free stock thing. 4 free stocks was crazy. It was the only time they ever did that, and they got affiliates on board like YouTube or content creators. It was insane. So, but that again happened before the short squeeze. It's just kind of interesting though, because Robinhood's like, hey, look, we went through this crisis and our user base still skyrocketed. Yeah, well, you had a massive marketing campaign that you've never had before. And now this lawsuit is using that against you guys. But I don't know how fair that is again though, because that marketing campaign happened and was decided well before this whole short squeeze stuff. Again, I know because I was one of the affiliates. And again, I stopped pitching them during this whole GameStop disaster because that would be ridiculous. But anyway, so Tenev points to making the ultimate call in PCOing, but this is very interesting. Take a look at this one. Robinhood Securities President and COO, James Swartwout. Okay, whatever. The CEO said in an internal chat on January 26th, I sold my AMC today. FYI, tomorrow morning we are moving GameStop to 100% position close only, so you're aware. That's shady, okay? This right here, that's shady. But the problem with this is, I wonder how much of this stuff happens. This is, the COO or the COO of Robinhood should not be trading AMC on what's happening internally at Robinhood. That particularly here is shady. So it's not a surprise that they bring this up right away. That's a big oopsies. And that individual, by the way, should get smacked by the SEC. Probably will for that, by the way. And it's not going to help Robinhood in this lawsuit. Now, here's where things start going kooky. On January 25th, 2021, Robinhood Securities received an NSCC daily margin statement from the DTCC. Remember, these are those crazy corporations that basically provide those requirements of how much capital you have to have. On January 25th, Robinhood needed to post $11 million. Not a big deal. Reflecting volatility on the same day, they upped the amount Robinhood needed to post to $74 million. No problem. Robinhood did this and did this. Even though same day they got a big bump, Robinhood fulfilled it. The next day on the 26th, they got a requirement that we need $85 million. Robinhood posted it. On the 27th, they got a notice that Robinhood actually had a surplus of $11 million. Things had settled down a little bit. Later on the 27th, they mentioned that the NSCC may be making intraday calls for additional capital, and that on the 27th at 10:32 p.m., Robinhood sent an internal email saying that Robinhood needed to borrow $300 million from the parent to cover cash deficit mainly driven by these clearing corporations. So Robinhood, this makes sense. Businesses have open lines of credit that they'll draw on, and then they'll take that money and use it for, day-to-day purposes. And then when they get the money back from like these deposits, they pay off the credit lines. Makes sense. But on January 28th at 5:11 a.m., they were told they needed $3 billion, which, keep in mind, the prior days they had high volatility. They needed, look at this, up to $400 million. This is when they borrowed $300 million. Like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden that's like a lot of money. They have the availability of funds. But when they got the $3 billion requests, and if an intraday call is made, all deficits must be received within an hour of the notice of this letter. You can kind of see here that a lot of burden is coming from the DTCC, which that's going to be a big out for Robinhood. But anyway, Robinhood here says, okay, that's it. We're going to PCO, position close only, meaning retail buyers can't buy, AMC, GME, Nokia, and BlackBerry, because we aren't paying $3 billion worth. By basically PCOing this, they can reduce the margin requirements from like $3 billion probably to like $600 million or whatever. See, look at this. $3 billion, we aren't paying $3 billion worth. So by PCOing these four symbols, they were able to bring the margin required down to $600 million. This lawsuit is basically saying, hey, Robinhood, you should have had $3 billion available. And there was a big thing that I already made a video about. It was a big thing about Robinhood's CEO on the 29th saying, we are not facing a liquidity crisis on CNBC. But the day before, on the 28th, an internal executive said, we're facing a liquidity crisis. And it's worth noting that on the 28th, Robinhood's executives didn't have the money. But on the 29th, Robinhood raised over $2 billion from investors and was able to get the money they needed to make sure they had plenty here. Actually, oh my gosh, they ended up in 2 days, they raised $3.4 billion in just 2 days. Now, this is interesting because the lawsuit is using not only the misleading nature of one executive saying, hey, we have a liquidity crisis, and then the CEO the next day saying, well, no, we don't have a liquidity crisis on CNBC. And that's possibly because they raised the money, right? They are taking this a step further, the plaintiffs, and they're saying, hey, look, why didn't you just raise the money on the morning of? So that way you didn't have to PCO. Why didn't you just, if you could raise $3.4 billion in 2 days, why didn't you do it on that day? And why didn't you keep GameStop and AMC alive? Why did you crush retailers' dreams in a once-in-a-decade short squeeze? Interesting argumentation here, right? So anyway, I'm summarizing some things because this is an 80-plus page lawsuit. Worth noting, by the way, that in another lawsuit, there's even talk about executives at Robinhood getting on a call with Citadel because, take a look at this, there's anecdotal evidence. This is in a Robinhood chat, internal chat. There's anecdotal evidence that several very large firms are having really bad nights too. And FYI, that Dan and I are joining Jim at 5 p.m. on a call with Citadel. This is Robinhood execs. They reached out and want to speak this evening, and we believe that they will make some demands on limiting payment for order flow across the board. We won't agree to anything, but wanted to give you a heads up. Vlad even mentions this might be a time for me to chat with Ken Griffin, which this is where we have to talk about the fact that Ken Griffin, after this whole debacle happened in January, testified before Congress, and when he was bluntly asked, did you collude with Robinhood, he said no. Now, a lot of folks are like, come on, man, the definition of collusion is cooperate in secret in an unlawful way. Okay, maybe not unlawful, right? Cooperate in secret in order to deceive or gain advantage over others. That part I could see. Now, the unlawful thing, TBD. We'll find out in courts, right? There could be more civil implications here rather than criminal implications. But colluding is cooperating in secret in order to deceive or gain an advantage over others. There's an argument to be made there. Abso-freaking-lutely. So, was there collusion with Robinhood? Well, I don't know if he should have said no. He should have probably, I don't think he should have said yes, because that's admitting guilt, and that would be like dumb. But he probably should have said something like, hey, we had multiple conversations with Robinhood. We don't think having conversations with our client rises to the level of collusion. But him saying bluntly no, And that when the record shows they did have meetings. Now, were those secret meetings? I mean, they certainly weren't public meetings, right? Was it done to deceive or gain an advantage over others, or was it done in the ordinary course of business? Well, that's TBD. However, in the court of public perception, as was trending on Twitter, hashtag Ken Griffin lied. And this has led to massive allegations that potentially Robinhood colluded with Citadel, which is basically, think about like a collusion like a cartel, where a cartel gets together and says, hey, we're gonna do this to screw somebody else. Now, in fairness, Robinhood does payment for order flow, and some of that flows through Citadel. Citadel is a service provider for Robinhood, which makes Robinhood a client of Citadel. In fact, over here, you can see Robinhood makes a lot of money with payment for order flow, but it's not just them. In June, for example, June 2021, they made $21 million in payment for order flow. In January, which is when this crisis happened, they made $47 million in payment for order flow from equities, so from shares. And from options in January 2021, they made $65 million. And you could kind of compare this to other companies here. Robinhood makes the most money from payment for order flow from options, but not the most money from shares, I believe. At least presently they don't. Presently, TD Ameritrade beats them on shares. But anyway, they make a lot of money from payment for order flow, and Citadel is one of the companies that provides this. So there's going to be argumentation that there was even collusion between Citadel and Robinhood. But remember, they have a client relationship, a business relationship. Not that that necessarily makes a difference. But folks, I want to ask you, does what happened with Robinhood rise to the level of negligence? Say this in the comments. Negligence. Did Robinhood fail by not having enough money? Should they have raised $3 billion earlier to, even if they got to this extreme situation, they could have prevented the disaster, even though other brokers did the same thing? Should Robinhood have raised that money sooner? Did Vlad lie when he said we don't have a liquidity crisis, even though the executive the day before said we have a liquidity crisis? They did raise $3.4 billion, but was that a lie by Vlad? So you get yourself, did Vlad lie? Was there collusion between Citadel and Robinhood, despite their client and service provider relationship? Was there collusion between the two to stop these trades? Or was it the DTCC and the NSCC and their margin requirements that screwed Robinhood into this situation? I don't know. Maybe it was a little bit of both. That's the thing. Things aren't usually black or white. And that's where a judge is going to have to come in. And this is where I want to ask you. Leave a comment down below. Was Robinhood negligent? They ran the stop sign thinking everything was going to be okay. Were they grossly negligent? They ran the stop sign knowing things were probably not going to be okay, but they did it anyway. Or is this a totally not guilty for you? Do you believe that Robinhood should be totally off the hook here because it wasn't their fault? That this was a 5 sigma event, a 1 in 3.5 million chance of happening or whatever? And ultimately, should Robinhood be let off the hook for this? Well, folks, let me know in the comments down below. But this gives you a little bit of insight into what the heck is going on with Robinhood. Thanks so much for watching, folks, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.